Rhythm games vary widely in popularity and general awareness. Your average video game player might know about Guitar Hero, maybe they played Dance Dance Revolution a couple times, or Just Dance at a party. Core rhythm gamers might be more aware of games with large online presences like Osu. More hardcore fans of the genre might be more interested in arcade rhythm games like Sound Voltex or Tune Them. But for today's game, I'm willing to bet that a good chunk of people who have ever played a rhythm game don't really know what this game is, or if they do, haven't played it. So today, we're going to be talking about BMS. But maybe you're watching this and you already know what BMS is and you play with a controller. Or maybe you play other rhythm games that require a specialized controller. And if you have one of these controllers, you'll probably need to get replacement parts for it at some point. Well, that's where this video's sponsor comes in. Blue Spring Express is an online store that specializes in selling high-quality replacement parts for arcade games and arcade-style controllers. They have parts for a variety of games and controllers for you to pick from, with products like springs, replacement switches, Sanwa buttons, and more specialized parts for specific games. Rhythm game controllers are frequently bought with the stock parts from the manufacturer, which can be inaccurate to the arcade and offers subpar performance. The parts from Blue Spring Express are great for upgrading your controller to allow for a better and more arcade-accurate experience. I myself have bought from Blue Spring Express a few times before. I bought their replacement Valkyrie-style knobs for Sound Voltex, as well as 20G springs to get my cabinet feeling as close to the modern Valkyrie cabinet as I could. Shipping is always fast, and the items are always packaged safely. Local players near me have also used them for switch and spring replacements, so I can definitely recommend them from personal experience. Check out the link in the description and use code PLAYBMS for 10% off. Thanks so much to Blue Spring Express for the sponsor, and with that, let's get back to the video. So, despite the intro I just gave, BMS technically isn't a game. BMS is actually a file format. Originally developed in 1998 by Urao Yane, the BMS file type was devised as a means for creating key-sounded rhythm game charts for home play. Since BMS refers to a file type and not a game itself, you actually need a program called a BMS player to be able to play these charts. The most common two BMS players are Lunatic Rave 2 and Beatoraja. These BMS players are more like the actual game, so to speak, and it's where things are going to become more familiar to people who have played a certain other rhythm game. And I'm sure if you've ever seen that game, you might be a bit confused by how I'm speaking here. BMS and BMS players mainly allow for the simulation of Beatmania 2DX's gameplay, that being 7 keys and a turntable. The BMS file format does also allow for charting of other gameplay styles, such as 9 key to simulate pop-in music, known as a PMS file, 10 keys for 5-key double play, or even 24 and 48 key for simulation of keyboard mania mechanics. But mainly, it's used for 7-key single-player modes. While BMS was designed to simulate these gameplay modes, something that largely distinguishes BMS from other sims like K-Shoot Mania is that BMS is not intended as a replacement for 2DX or a way to play 2DX content. A large majority of music and content playable in BMS is actually made specifically for BMS, and is not ported content, largely because every song in BMS must be key-sounded due to the nature of the file format. This is why BMS is often referred to as its own rhythm game. It has its own unique set of original content exclusive to only BMS. Because of this, BMS is often seen instead as a supplemental or alternative game / training tool for 7-key or Beatmania 2DX, due to the extreme amount of exposure to pattern variety and difficulty available by playing BMS. Ports of existing content are actually heavily discouraged, colloquially being known as illegal BMS. These are BMS files where the audio is simply one long key sound, and the rest of the notes are charted as normal, allowing for ports of existing 2DX content. BMS like this are generally frowned upon by the community and are not allowed onto score ranking pages. If you're coming to BMS, just know that you're here to play the original content that's made for BMS. And trust me, you know a lot of it. Despite not many people knowing of it, BMS is extremely influential in the rhythm game scene, due largely in part to BMS events. BMS events are events where a collection of BMS artists, charters, visual creators, and more come together to produce new original BMS works for a contest to have them judged against others. If you're familiar with the idea of an arcade rhythm game having a song contest, imagine that same thing, but the teams have to produce the music, charts, and visuals all on their own against hundreds of other people. These events not only serve as a great way to bring the BMS community together, but also as a way to drive more content into the scene, with loads of BMS content being produced for these. The biggest event of the year is BMS of Fighters, or BOF. BOF is the crowning jewel of the BMS event calendar, the biggest contest and the one hundreds of people enter each year. Teams compete to create new music and charts and gather impressions and ratings from players who review their content and give their opinions on it. Even if you didn't know what BMS or BOF were before just now, if you've played a modern rhythm game, you have almost certainly played a song that came from a BMS event or was from an artist that got their start in BMS. Don't believe me? Nelv by Silent Room, BOFU 2017. Doppelganger by Leaf, BOF 2013. Energy Synergy Matrix by Tenchiki, BOFU 2017. Juggle by Ross, BOFU 2016. Milk by Mori Atsushi, BMS of Fighters Ultimate. Metatron by SHIKI, BMS of Fighters Ultimate. EOS by Genkiha, BOF 2012. BBKK by Nora2R, BOF 2013. The Formula by Junk, BOF 2013. Pop and Shower by P-Light, BOF 2011, and even Freedom Dive, known for being the ultra-hard Omega boss song across many different rhythm games, is a BMS song from the Max Beat BMS event. Many artists, charters, and BGA designers that have become prevalent across Japanese and international rhythm games got their start producing for BMS as a way to get their feet wet and participate in a big community event. These events have had an insane amount of influence on the direction of rhythm games as a whole, with artists like SHIKI absolutely pioneering sounds that would become popular in rhythm games years later, despite most people not even knowing that they were engaging in content that came from an event like this. With all the content out there, BMS comprises a vast ocean of rhythm game content that would take years and years to go through and see all of. So now that you know what BMS is, how do you check out all this amazing content? Well, the first problem you'll most likely run into with BMS is downloading songs and charts. Unlike more popular and centralized games based around customs like Osu or Eterna, BMS does not have one centralized repository for downloading songs. There are some searching services like BMS Search, but generally speaking, if you want to find something, there aren't packs and you're going to have to know what to look for. Generally, there would be two schools of thought here when it comes to grabbing a chunk of content to start with in BMS. Most BMS players suggest downloading one of the community-created mega torrents of content, or a Google Drive link containing an absolute boatload of BMS files. It takes up a ton of space, but will cover a lot of the content used in common difficulty tables, which we'll talk about shortly. That said, it can be intimidating to have to commit so much hard drive space to a game you don't play much, so instead I'd suggest grabbing the BMS Starter Pack 2022 from the Beatoraja English guide, which I've linked below. It'll still have a good chunk of content to get you started, and takes up much less space than one of the giant torrents. Otherwise though, you're on your own and might have to look through event pages, BMS search, or ask other players for help on where to find stuff. Just be patient and willing to look around a little and you're bound to find some good stuff to play. So after you download some songs, you're probably going to have one giant folder that is a complete mess and is unsorted in any way. That's where difficulty tables come in. Difficulty tables are essentially community-run difficulty scales that can be imported into your game to sort the music you have, if the songs you have are included in the table itself. It also includes sabuns, which are additional charts for a song not originally packaged with the song. There are three main difficulty scales for tables in BMS. There are normal tables, following roughly the difficulty scale of Beatmania 2DX, going from 1 to 12. After that, there are insane tables. Insane BMS refers to a difficulty subset starting around 2DX 12s, and also content harder than 2DX 12s, split into 25 levels. After Insane, there's Overjoy tables, going beyond even the top end of the Insane tables into new dimensions of brutal difficulty. There are also alternative difficulty tables created by the community that serve similar roles to normal, Insane, and Overjoy. The most popular alternative tables are the Satellite and Stella tables, with Satellite starting around a normal 11 and extending up to Insane 19, and Stella starting around Insane 19 and going up from there. These tables are very active and updated frequently and are very popular with existing 2DX players who are just moving over to BMS for the first time. If you already play Beatmania 2DX, I'd highly recommend you check these alternative tables out. Similarly to 2DX's Dan courses, BMS has community-sourced Dan courses, the most popular of which are the Genocide 2018 Normal and Insane class lists. Genocide Normal goes up to roughly 10th Dan level in Beatmania 2DX, and Insane class goes from 10th Dan and beyond. These are often used as skill checkpoints in your progression. Tables are updated by those who manage them over time, changing out songs in the folders so that they accurately reflect the difficulties in the folders that they're trying to maintain. In this way, tables can also sort of be used as a way to find quality content, since there's a lot of BMS content out there. That said, don't be afraid of going outside the tables every once in a while. Digging around in an event folder or in a table you haven't played might lead you to something hard, something really good, or something hilarious. So now that you've got content, what are you using to play the game? Similar to the downloading issue, dealing with input isn't the easiest thing in the world since gameplay is based on 7-key Beatmania, so the game expects you to have 7 buttons and a turntable. However, despite it not exactly emulating 7-key play, BMS is very playable on a keyboard, and there have been some very historically successful players on keyboard over time. So don't feel discouraged if you don't have access to a traditional 7-key controller. If you do want to go the route of a more traditional 7-key experience, you can use a 2DX controller. There are lots of 7-key controllers out there for you to check out, be it from Gamo2's online store to other sellers like Yoancon, or even custom-built or two-order controllers. There's lots out there, and most run between $300 to $400. Not the cheapest thing, but a good investment in a game with tons of content if you're really interested in it. Watch out for the shipping costs, though. The last thing to know about the general gameplay and experience of playing BMS is skins. LR2 and Beatoraja are generally very customizable, from the menu screens to the gameplay to the results screen and everything in between, as well as all the images and sounds that go with it. You can spend time looking for great pre-built custom themes, replace images and swap pieces to create your perfect, beautiful theme, or just fill your game with shitposts, stupid results screen images, and spinning cubes. The sky is the limit when it comes to the customization of BMS players. You'll have to be a little patient finding skins, as they can be a bit scattered around like everything else in BMS, but if you give it a little time, you can really make the game exactly what you want it to be. There's a good repository of skins to get you started on the Beatoraja English guide, so start there if you're getting into BMS and really want to make the game your own. Okay, so that's pretty much everything you need to know about what BMS is and why it's important to rhythm games as a whole. But why am I talking about it right now? Well, that's because BMS of Fighters TT Sonata for the 20th ceremony, the 20th anniversary of BOF and also the 20th event, is in progress right now. The teams are currently hard at work creating their songs and charts to submit before the impressions period in October. One thing I neglected to mention earlier is how BOF actually works. The scoring for BOF is all publicly sourced. Anyone that plays the BMS files released in the event is allowed to give an impression, which is basically a comment with a score. These scores, and also the number of impressions a song gets, are aggregated, and that is how songs are ranked in the event. This means that you have a chance to not only play the newest, hottest BMS content right when it releases, but also have a voice in determining who made the best content. BOF teams usually comprise a collection of people and also usually involve a few submissions from each team. meaning there is a load of content released when the impressions period hits. I would highly recommend, if you have any interest in 7-key or have played 2DX before, dust your controller off, set up Beatoraja, and get in and check out all the amazing new content. Last year was my first time playing BOF content during the impression period, and it was one of my favorite sessions of playing rhythm games I've ever had. Exploring all the new content and digging around was an absolute blast, and it led me to some amazing songs and also hilarious moments. Yes! It's real! I'll definitely be checking the content out again this year, and I'm gonna try to find some time to leave some impressions as well. Many big artists are returning this year to participate in the 20th BOF. Just recently, as of note, Sakura UK indicated their return to BOF under both the Sakura and their TJ Hangmeal alias, which will undoubtedly yield some crazy results, so definitely look forward to that. Tag of DDR fame is also participating in this year's BOF, which is certainly a nice surprise. Some other notable contributors this year include names like Ross, saaa, Litmus, Somon, Bilyamoto, Frums, Type R, Sobrum, Wyvern, Dandalus, Ardolf, Reku Mochizuki, Enemy, Silas, Transcendium, Ice, Official AZ3, Rose Quartz, and Quirless. And those are just the ones I know of or saw in the list. I'm sure I missed more than a few, but this event really draws out the best creatives in the rhythm game space, both new and veteran. And the amount of work that goes into these is crazy. You're going to hear some of the most awesome music, play some of the most fun charts, and see some of the most amazing animation work that will leave you saying, "This is free?" You'll also see some awesome entries from first-timers, people getting their feet wet in BMS and music production. Stuff that might leave you saying, "This has potential." It's really rhythm gaming's very own art fair type of production, with everybody bringing the best they have to offer to the table to show off everyone's talents, and not for money or personal gain, just to be part of something so near and dear to the rhythm game scene for 20 years, even if not everyone realizes it. The impression period for BOF TT starts on October 18th, 2024, and from there you can start downloading works and leaving comments. One word of note, impressions are only open to those who actually play the files. Please don't just watch a video of the chart and then leave an impression. That's actually against the rules of the event. Most content in BOF comes with a range of difficulties, so just download the content and give it a try with whatever means you can if you want to leave impressions, or simply find a stream of someone playing the content and enjoy it that way. Downloading the files can be a little bit of a hassle during the event since they're all individual, but if you're around in any servers with BMS players, keep an eye out for a re-uploaded package somewhere. Or throw on some music and spend an afternoon downloading what you want to play. If I find any publicly posted aggregate downloads for BOF TT, I'll put it in the description of this video. BMS has contributed an insane amount to the legacy of rhythm games without many people even knowing it, fueled by a community compelled to create new and better content for events year after year. Whether you're using it as a training tool for your 7-key journey, a casual afternoon of rhythm games, or a means to see and play the newest, hottest content, BMS is an often overlooked game that you should definitely turn your eyes towards. Thanks for watching, and thanks so much to my supporters on Patreon. Check out my Twitter, Twitch, and community Discord. Links are in the description below. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.